Switzerland has the most disgusting and miserable people and political system. The Swiss are the moral enemies of the new Germany. Those words belong to none other than Adolf Hitler and were spoken in June 1941 at a meeting with his great ally Benito Mussolini. A year earlier, France had been defeated. Poland, Norway, Denmark, Luxembourg, Belgium, and the Netherlands were already in the grip of the Third Reich, while Italy, Hungary, Romania, and Spain were allies or puppet states of Nazi Germany. However, among all these territories controlled by the Axis, there was Switzerland, a small country that, despite being literally surrounded, managed to remain neutral and its population alienated from the enormous war that was raging in Europe. Although Hitler expressed his desire to conquer this neighboring country on more than one occasion and even his generals drew up a concrete plan to seize the Alps, Switzerland remained free and out of the hands of the German tyrant throughout the war. But, why did Germany never invade the Swiss state? Was it due to military or political and economic issues? Don't leave your screen because in the next few minutes we'll tell you everything about Switzerland's neutrality in the largest conflict in history. Are you ready? Let's start. Historically, Switzerland is a country with a multiplicity of roots, which is reflected in the fact that it has 4 official languages: Romansh, Italian, French and German. This has made it over the centuries a target of the various European conquerors and dictators in history. During World War II and the years before, both Hitler and Mussolini expressed their desire to reconquer the parts of the Swiss country that speak their respective languages. Hitler even considered the Swiss a failed branch of the German people and considered that the Swiss state had no right to exist. Considering all this, the reasons why neither Germany nor Italy invaded Switzerland during World War II are obviously a matter of debate to this day. Although before the outbreak of the conflict Hitler had promised to respect Swiss neutrality, on June 25, 1940, the same day that France fell into Nazi hands, Germany began planning Operation Tannenbaum to invade the neighboring country. This operation consisted of attacking Switzerland together with Italy with troops of up to 500,000 soldiers, of course only after a series of bombings by the Luftwaffe, a usual strategy of the Third Reich. Himmler even had several conversations discussing different candidates to take over the Swiss territory once it was successfully occupied. However, the plans for this invasion were never carried out. Why? Well, many historians and scholars point out that Switzerland might not be as easy to conquer as some of the other countries in Europe. The Swiss rulers, preventing the outbreak of war, had increased their military budget considerably during the 1930s. This resulted in the development of some excellent weapons such as the K-31 rifle, which was considered superior to the German Kar-98K, and the French Morane Saulnier M2S.406 fighter aircraft which was manufactured under contract. At the same time, the vast majority of Swiss men had military training, so they were ready to defend their country and had top-notch weapons to do so. Even the general in charge of the Swiss armed forces during World War II, Henri Guesclin, raised the age of conscripts to 60 and had a concrete plan to defend his country from possible invasion. Knowing that despite its large number of soldiers and good weapons, Switzerland was not a real match for the powerful forces of the Wehrmacht, Guesclin's strategy was to leave the cities and flatlands to Germany and mobilize his army towards the Alps. This territory was considered a fortress, as the Axis would have found it extremely difficult to use their tanks and air support there. At the same time, this would allow the Swiss soldiers to apply guerrilla tactics, taking advantage of their knowledge of the area. This meant a defense of almost millions of men, well-trained, armed and in a complex terrain for the invaders. Even if the conquest succeeded, the possibility of resistance movements in the Alps would have forced Germany to maintain a good number of troops there. According to many, this is the main reason why Hitler never launched Operation Tannenbaum, since Switzerland did not have such a high strategic value as to justify such resource mobilization. At the same time, as the war progressed, the Axis priorities shifted, especially its struggles against Britain and the Soviet Union. However, other specialists and historians indicate that this was not the real reason behind the non-invasion.
If Napoleon had managed to win the Alps and conquer Switzerland, why couldn't Hitler, who at that time was basically unstoppable and had managed to triumph under similar conditions in the Yugoslav Balkans and in Greece?
Many authors maintain that Nazi Germany did not attack the Swiss country simply because its neutrality was convenient, and many have even considered it an ally of the Axis. Swiss sociologist and political scientist Jean Ziegler summed up this view categorically: Hitler was crazy, but not crazy enough to attack his own banker. It turns out that during the war, the Third Reich sent and kept a large amount of gold and money in Swiss banks, so attacking this country would have been economically risky. At the same time, German gold panning gave Nazi generals and officers a great deal of insurance in case they lost the war, as they eventually did. In addition, Swiss companies produced weapons for the German forces. Although neutral and independent, the Swiss supplied 10 times more weapons and military technology to the Axis than to the Allies. In the same way, Switzerland was a perfect place for political meetings and conversations between both sides that, although not officially recognized, happen more often than people think.
In conclusion, there was no practical use in invading Switzerland, since its neutrality favored Hitler. The Tannenbaum operation could be extremely counterproductive if the conquest became more complex and required more resources.
Even if this operation went as the Third Reich had planned, the invasion might still have negative consequences, in political and economic terms, so it was not worth it in any way. Eventually, all plans to invade Switzerland completely fizzled out in 1943, after the fall of Fascist Italy. Currently, the role of the Swiss government in the war continues to be something studied and questioned, largely due to its close relations with Nazism. Although it managed to maintain its independence and neutrality throughout the conflict, things could have been very different and negative for Switzerland if Germany won the war, since an invasion would have come sooner or later, as a well-known song sung by the Wehrmacht.
Switzerland is a porcupine that we'll have for dessert, then we'll go for the whole wide world. And bring us Roosevelt. We reached the end of the video, and we want to ask you, do you think the war would have changed anything, against or in favor of Hitler, if Germany invaded Switzerland? Leave your answer in the comment box below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to learn about many more military events that left their mark on history. Thank you very much for joining us until the end. And stay tuned for our next video.